If someone were to tell you a story on how James Bond, Carroll Shelby, and the Japanese domestic sports car market are linked together, you would probably think it's nothing more than a work of fiction straight out of Ian Fleming's novels. But actually, all of this is real, and it's a true, epic, and yet somewhat tragic story of the 2000 GT from Toyota.
Absolutely not.
After World War II ended, Japan was left in ruins, and its rebuilding process was a considerable challenge, especially for the country's auto industry. Toyota had squeaked by, thanks to a US Army contract during the Korean War, and they attempted to resume building passenger cars. But before they did, they visited America to train at Ford, and their experience training with the Ford Motor Company and the rise of small affordable bubble cars in Europe convinced Toyota they needed to build their own small passenger car. So in 1952, they launched the Toyopet Crown, which was a small, economy, family hauler that worked everywhere except the US. Not only was its 1.5-liter four-cylinder so slow that it couldn't keep up with traffic on the highways, the suspension was set up for terrible Japanese roads and not our recently designed road network, so it was very uncomfortable. And the result was a sales disaster here in the States. Their image was ruined. Selling your car as the Toyopet Crown, I don't think helps. But still, Toyota needed to change the perception of their brand internationally. And that's where Nissan comes in. Nissan had already made a fantastic little car, the Fairlady 1600, and were searching for a replacement. So they contacted legendary piano and motorcycle company Yamaha to help design the successor. And I'll be honest, the result was a very second-gen Corvette-looking thing. And that's where it stayed, a concept thing that never progressed. Instead, Nissan moved away from the A550X concept to the Datsun 510. But now Yamaha had a near fully built sports car without a company to build it. So they started offering bids up to other manufacturers, and Toyota, desperate to reinvigorate their image, accepted. In fact, Toyota was so on board with this that their design brief was, do whatever is necessary not only to produce the Toyota 2000 GT, but to make one of, or perhaps even the, greatest car in the world. That's a tall order, and Toyota pulled out all of the stops. They took a page out of Lotus's book and used an X-shaped chassis not too dissimilar to that of the Elan. And like the Lotus, the 2000 GT was tuned for the track. It was the first Toyota with rack and pinion steering, and it also had things like front and rear independent suspension, telescopic dampers, power-assisted disc brakes on all four corners, and a lightweight aluminum body that was very good-looking. This might just be one of the best-looking cars of all time. It no longer borrowed styling from the Corvette, it borrowed it from the European cars like the Jaguar E-Type, and since it was made out of aluminum, the whole car was very light, as in 2,500 pounds light, with a proper interior. This was not a stripped-out Ferrari, this was a proper sports car with a fancy interior, a touring car, if you will. Because remember, Yamaha made elegant pianos, and they decked out the interior with the finest wood trim and aluminum accents. However, even for sports cars, the interior itself was a bit small. The way the seats are arranged in the X chassis and the streamlined roof meant that anyone taller than 5'10" had some serious issues. And that became a bigger issue than expected when 6'2" Sir Sean Connery, star of the upcoming Bond film You Only Live Twice, where a 2000 GT is prominently featured, had to ride in one. So Toyota built two one-off 2000 GT convertibles just for the film. If you actually look at the Bond film, you can actually see Connery's head sticking up over the windshield. And sure, Bond never actually drives the 2000 GT in You Only Live Twice, but it's still one of the greatest Bond cars of all time, and I wish Toyota made the convertible version a production car, because it might actually look better than the coupe. So, the 2000 GT had the looks, it had the handling, and it had the tech. But a sports car is nothing but the sum of its parts, and a big part is the engine. Once again, Yamaha tuned the Toyota Crown's 2-liter straight-six by adding 3 two-barrel carbs and dual overhead cams to make 150 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque. And when partnered with the streamlined body and the 5-speed gearbox, it could hit 135 miles an hour, but also get 31 mpg. It was a great car. And naturally, such a machine would go racing. First, Toyota went about setting 16 endurance speed records by driving a 2000 GT for 72 hours straight, even during a monsoon. And with 72 hours of straight driving under their belt setting numerous endurance records, Toyota took the next logical step and went to 24 hours of straight endurance racing. The 2000 GT scored several outright victories, including the 1,000 kilometers of Suzuka and both the 24 hours of Fuji and the 1,000 kilometers of Fuji. All of this buzz around the car convinced the Texas Le Mans winner and chicken farmer Carroll Shelby to buy 3 of them for SCCA competition, scoring 4 wins. It had everything: handling, speed, looks, efficiency, power, build quality, racing prowess, and yet nobody bought it. In 3 years, only 337 2000 GTs were built, compared to Toyota's expected 1,000 cars per year. To be honest, the car was simply too expensive, too tiny, and Toyota wasn't known enough at the time to your average buyer. Toyota lost huge amounts of money on the 2000 GT, and that brings me to an interesting parallel. When Lexus launched the LFA in 2010, it too was a partnership between Yamaha and Toyota. The LFA also had magnificent handling, an exquisite interior, timeless styling, and a successful racing career. And yet, like the 2000 GT, the LFA was more expensive than its rivals, and Toyota struggled to sell the already limited number it had produced. And it wasn't until years later that the public realized just how much they had missed on. That's arguably why both cars are worth crazy amounts of money. LFAs are going for $800,000 now, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the 2000 GT's $1.2 million auction price. And maybe that's the 2000 GT's true legacy. It never achieved the success it deserved at the time, but it served as the eventual launching point, not only for Toyota's vast racing programs, but their icons like the Supra and the LFA. Sure, the Corolla is the best-selling car of all time, and the Prius revolutionized the hybrid, but in terms of performance cars, I think Japan owes a lot to the little 2000 GT.